perceived it really well.
See the duck?
I can't really relate to chopping off my hair.
No! You have the distinguished look already. You're already there.
I really wanted to do this. It's just the time.
I go through the 1,200 photos we took and pick one.
Big guy behind my vocal things.
And I had like a very detailed schedule of which shots to work on each day, and then that's 7 days a week.
I tipped over that edge, and that was a really exciting moment for me.
I'm still laughing about that intro about Jurassic Park and elephants.
She still hasn't got any elephants, so it's a win-win so far.
All those little things that you forgot how to deal with.
But it was so much work to reach people.
You just like flow love, and it's really nice.
It is the 10-year anniversary. I can't even speak of Eclectic Arts. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts, based here in Seattle, Washington. Thank you so much for joining me on this Monday, the 18th of October 2021. And as always, I have a few housekeeping details to go through before we get to tonight's interview. And as fresh as of this morning, I have another live stream interview this week. I actually didn't think I was going to, but I do. So this Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific, I have film director Evan Jackson Leong joining me. And Evan directed a really interesting film called Snakehead. It's a feature film for him, and it's fictional, and it's about human trafficking in Chinatown in a fictional setting. So it's a very, very gritty film, and I'll be actually reviewing it very, very soon. I have watched it. I just haven't had a chance to review it. So Evan's going to be joining me on Thursday at 7 p.m. And also, if you're into films and film festivals, one of the best things about being virtual is that you can partake in a lot of these film festivals. I, as a media member, will be reviewing this film festival called the Indie Memphis Film Festival, which starts this Wednesday. And tickets and passes are available right now. So if you would like to check things out, you can go to indiememphis.org. That's where you can see what the programming is and what's playing when. I know they already have a few in-person shows that are sold out. So there's going to be a lot of different types of films to choose from. So if that's something that you haven't explored before, please take a moment to do so. And if you'd like to know more about what I have going on, you can follow me as Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram. That's where I post everything first. And then some of that information migrates over to other social media platforms. If this is your first time watching my YouTube channel, if you could hit the subscribe button, I greatly appreciate that. And if you want to know what's coming up, you can hit the little notification bell right next to it. Please be aware that's going to send emails to your inbox, though, but it'll also kind of serve as a reminder of, oh, Mark's got another live stream coming up with this particular guest. And if you're on the Twitch side of things, if you could follow me over there, that's always welcome. That's the first platform that I started all this virtual work on with the wonderful band Alice, who actually is going on tour this Friday in person. So that's really exciting that they're getting back out on the road. And yeah, so there's just a lot of things going on. I can also mention that if you want to have some fun, which is the new fun table sessions, that's where I bring guests back who have never met each other before, and we just kind of shoot the breeze for a couple hours. We have the October edition scheduled for the 29th, which is next Friday, right before the weekend of Halloween. So we're going to be talking with and hanging out with a couple people who have film and dance backgrounds. And that's always a lot of fun. We'll probably have a little bit of a harvest Halloween theme going on as well. And I already have something back here, which is way back from when I was a child. As I've been going through all my things as I move, I was like, hey, look what I found. So I put it up here in the background. But let's get to my guest today, because I'm really excited to talk to her. My guest today is a longtime practitioner of martial arts. She is also a yoga instructor. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts Virtual Studio, Angie M. Hi, Angie.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going pretty well for a Monday. How are you?
Not same.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to join me, though. I really appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to exploring everything in your background and everything else that that you've kind of told me in person a bit.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yeah, we've got a lot of different avenues to explore. So you tell me where you want to go, and we'll hit it.
Okay, sounds good. So, you know, one thing that's kind of interesting is that I'm a sports fan, so a lot of times I hear coaches and also just critics and reporters talk about what's the identity of a team or an athlete or something like that. And I'm kind of curious, have you ever thought about yourself, like what is your identity, either as a martial artist or as a wellness person or yoga? What do you feel as is your identity?
I kind of consider myself like a smiling badass. But that is my identity when it comes to sport and just fitness in general, because I'm a big believer in like opening the door to a lot of people, but at the same time, it's like there's a gritty side to taking on any sport or skill. You've got to be willing to like grind and put in that work, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy yourself while you're doing it. So there are times I teach group fitness. I do kickboxing classes, like heavy bag kickboxing, and I'll tell people in class pretty regularly, like, hey, this is what you're aiming for, and let them know that those targets are like, you're trying to hit someone's nose here. Like, we're breaking noses and popping jaws, and you're aiming for a temple here. But at the same time, I'll tell them like eye contact, and there's that like competition stare. But then I'll finish up and be like, but that doesn't mean you can't smile when you're done. It's like, yeah, hit it hard, do your thing, but also like enjoy yourself. Like hitting a punching bag is a good time. Like enjoy it.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that that you have to get in there and you have to grind. But at the same time, there's got to be some level of enjoyment too. Because if you're just grinding just to grind and you're like, oh, I can't stand this, it's like, well, at some point you're like, well, why am I even doing it?
Right. And that's a big deal, because I have found there are people, because I teach a couple different modalities, and there's a lot to be said for, I've had folks come in that have never put on a pair of gloves. They've never made a fist. They've never punched anything. And that's fine. Totally fine. It's not, for most people, it's not in their everyday routine. And I've had a couple folks, we've done some one-on-one training, and they'll go, oh my gosh, I had no idea I would enjoy this so much, but like, I really love hitting things. I'm like, well, we're kind of taught to repress a little bit of that, and you just kind of take care of yourself and you stay very polite. But there's a certain amount of like, and in fitness in general, some people find that by getting on their bike and covering a lot of miles. Other people find it running. I got into some distance running at one point. I was quite slow. That was not exactly where I shined my best, but I was determined, so there was that. So it's like, you got to find that thing that speaks to you, and the thing that sucks sometimes, but that you finish and you have that like slay a dragon type feeling, like that's your thing. Dig into that.
That's a really good way to put it. I know from many of the artists that I've talked to, and I'm me being a musician myself, it becomes something where, you need to woodshed at times. There's gonna be times like when I was starting out playing guitar, my hands are small, so I hated trying to fret chords. I hated doing scales. I hated all that stuff. But at some point, it starts to pay off, and that's when it starts getting good to you. And if it's getting good to you, just like what you said, then it's like, okay, I think you found what you like, because you can't put it down, and you want to keep going back to it.
Right. It's worth those blisters. It's worth that extra reach.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like, if you're doing another rep, if you're going another mile, if you're doing, getting up on Sunday when you thought that was going to be your cheat day or something, it's like, no, this is why you do it.
Yeah, big time. And having those little goals within that makes it so much better too, when it's not just like, okay, here, I'm going to hand you a guitar, do this chord 1,000 times. Like, why? You're reverse engineering something else, right? You're looking at, well, there's this song I want to play. Okay, well, I can't do that without this element to it. So I'm gonna have to like grind on that and make sure I know how to do these things. Otherwise, that song for you as a guitar player is going to be incomplete, and no one's going to know what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, and then they'll start throwing things at you and booing you, and
right. No one wants that.
Yeah, it won't be a good time for anybody.
Right. That's a rough day. That's a rough day.
Yeah, it reminds me. I'm not very athletic, but I did play soccer way back when, and I just remember, you had to do your skill drills, and you had to work on things and kind of find out where your position was on the field. That was kind of your strength, and then you had to keep working at it. And that's why you practice. That's why you have to keep doing drills and getting your fitness up and your cardio up and everything else. And like you said, those small goals are so important, because they're stepping stones to what you want to get to. And if you don't have those, you're not going to get to that other piece. You can wish it all you want, but you got to make it happen.
Right, right. And there's a certain level of, I've had people comment on some of my photos and stuff here and there, and they're like, oh, that looks so cool. I want to learn how to do it. And it's like, well, if you only want to learn how to do it because it looks cool, like that might be a thing that gets you in the door, but eventually you gotta want to know a little bit more than, oh, it looks cool. Otherwise you'll never stick with it, right? Like there's that skill build too. So it's like, yeah, it can look cool, but also like, no, you're going to spend a lot of time throwing a lot of punches before it looks cool. You're going to look weird for a little bit because, elbows will be out too far. You'll be doing the thumb thing instead of tucking them down. And it takes time. It takes time. So you've got to want more than just, it looks cool. Like, okay, that can get you in the door, but you got to find some intrinsic motivation beyond that.
Yeah, and that actually brings up a really interesting question, I guess, for me, is that knowing that you need to put in the work and you need to take the time to achieve these smaller goals to get to the bigger goals. Have you found that with the younger generation now that it's harder for them because they do see something, they see that it looks cool, and perhaps they don't have the patience to know that they have to put in the time. They just want the shortcut to get to it?
Yes and no. I think it's easy to see that on a very 1,000-foot view type level where it's like, oh, they're so distracted. But at the same time, I've had some really great work that I've been able to put in with some younger folks that have been like junior high to high school age as well. And they've come in and been really, really willing to learn and study and figure out how their body moves differently and do it with a sense of just acceptance that I'm new at this and that's okay. So part of me is very encouraged by that, but I've certainly run into it before too, where you can okay, we're gonna have to work a little harder. I sense that you don't want to be uncomfortable, and you're just gonna need to be a little bit. We can't do everything right within the comfort zone, and that's okay too. That's just different learning styles to some regard. And again, people that have never done this type of thing, they're kind of like, what do I do with my hands? So and that's adults and younger kids as well. So
yeah, and that's actually a really good point too, because I had to kind of remind myself, and I think I had mentioned to you before, that I had myself and my students had done some Taekwondo lessons with an Olympic level Taekwondo instructor, which really freaked me out because I'm not very athletic, and that guy was intimidating as hell to watch. But it was great. He was also a really good teacher, so that was great. I mean, we all needed it. We all needed that discipline, which was nice. But then when we started sparring, it became, wow, this is something that I really need to make sure I'm paying attention to what he was teaching me, because when we're trying to spar, I could actually hurt somebody if I'm doing it wrong. Because this was not something where we're trying to compete with each other. We're just trying to learn how to do the moves correctly and block and all that kind of thing. And it was, a really interesting reminder of there's a reason why you do these things first to get to, like you're just talking about, to get these next things. Not only if you're going to try to be from a fitness level or competition level, but just from a safety level too. It's kind of like working with somebody. If you don't know how to catch them,
right,
in a circus act or something, that they could fall down and crack their neck or something. So,
right. And in a sparring situation, you're really, on the one hand, you're testing your own skill level, and in a way, it's really good to be up against somebody who's a little bit better than you, but it can be very scary too, because you're trusting them to I want you to challenge me just enough, but please don't wipe the floor with me entirely, because we're gonna have to go again. And we got hours of this to do in a week. So it and I have sparred with people in the past, and granted, just to be clear, my sparring days were a number of years ago. Most of my competition time was junior high to high school, and I'm 35 now. So it's been a minute since I was actually actively competing. But with that, there were those times where it was I'd be put up against people, and partly just because of my height. I'm 5'10", so there were more guys that were closer to my height, and then I'd get paired up with them, and I was like, God, they're just so much stronger than me at that point. But then you'd step into competition, I'd be with girls, about my height, my weight class, and it would be oh, thank goodness I got to spar with those guys. That pushed me to be a little bit better. And I will say, I feel like the studio that I came up through had a lot of just very high level athletes. It's one of those, I was always just like, God, everyone's so good. You know, like everyone's so good. It was just incredible to watch, and to be surrounded by that, you know, it motivates you to just push that much harder. And you know, God, I hope I'm doing enough.
See, and I think there's a lot of parallels between what you just said and with not only with the artistic things that and folks that I interview, but also just anything in life that people choose to do. That you know, if you get yourself to a certain level where you feel like you know everything, you probably aren't really surrounding yourself with the right people at that point. You need to go to the next level.
Right.
And like you were just saying, you need to get some people that have a skill set that's a little bit higher, a little bit, you know, longer, more veteran, whatever than you, because then you can try to learn something. If here's the next goal, I need to try to get to that. I can use myself as an example. I think when I'm in the photo pit and I see these photographers whose work I'm a huge fan of, I said, man, those photos are so good, those guys do. And here I am rubbing shoulders with them, and I keep thinking, that's where I'm trying to get to. So I got a lot of work ahead of me, but that's good to have that. I don't want to be like looking around to, man, everyone's work is like mine. Then it's like,
right.
There's nothing that's going to push me other than pushing myself. But when you have someone who's clearly perhaps better at you or more seasoned than you, then it's like, hey, here's something else I can try to add into what I want to eventually become.
Yeah, and it makes a big difference. And you know, too, we had some really good coaches there as well. Although I did have one that every now and then, if I left myself open just on principle, he would back kick me right in the gut, and I would get just the wind knocked out of me. He's like, "What? Move." Right. And that's one of those hard lessons, but at the same time, you're like, you get real quick on your feet. You got a back kick like that coming at you, you know?
Yeah, no, it reminds me, this is something I think from a comedian or something a long time ago, talking about back in the 70s that parenting was different, meaning that he was using an example that, like, if the kid's going over there like pulling on a TV set and eventually that thing's going to fall, and it's like, well, let him fall on him. He's going to learn not to pull on it again.
You'll learn today, right?
Yeah, or taking that panty and sticking it into an electrical socket. Yeah, let him do that and find out once he gets electrocuted.
Right?
Oh yeah, you better not do that anymore.
That's right. Gravity and electricity are tough lessons, but you only learn them once.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I think even from the limited athletics that I had done back in school, of it learns you real quick when you've made a mistake, and they show you, hey, you're not supposed to keep yourself open like that. Boom, and that's why. It's like, oh damn, okay.
Right, and there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, there's none of this like trying to talk and explain it to you. Remember what we said, what we talked about, 2 weeks ago. No, does that remind you right now after you can't breathe?
Right. You're on the ground, and that's why.
Yeah, well, that's yeah, I got it the first time. You don't have to do. Please don't do it again.
Right. Nope. Understood.
So that kind of brings things to a point that I would love to hear more about, and I think people that are watching this now, watching it down the road, would love to hear about what got you into martial arts, and then what branches did you study, and that whole world, especially like you mentioned, your competition days were a while ago.
I got into martial arts, so I predominantly was in Taekwondo. That was my go-to for many years. My very first paycheck that I ever got was as a Taekwondo instructor. Like, you're there taking classes, getting ready to compete, and then eventually teaching. And that was one of those things. I started, I think, when I was like 11. And it was one of the things we would do at our house. My dad was big into, like field action movies and things, and we'd watch Walker, Texas Ranger, and that kind of show, right? And I think it was actually an episode of that I saw, and I did this thing. This is why I mentioned it earlier. I saw somebody do this kick, and I went, "Oh, that's so cool!" And my dad looked at me and he goes, "Well, you can do that." And I was like, And in no time, he signed me up for like a 2-week trial at the local Taekwondo place that was just down the hill, not knowing I was going to end up with, some of these high-level athletes. My very first class, and then my boss now does not love that I tell this story, but I'm going to tell this story. My very first class, I passed out. And it was one of those where it was like, he was just so intimidating. Like, it was just this guy who now I, again, work with. That came full circle. I can dive back into that. But he ended up being one of my coaches for Junior Olympics down the road. But that was when I went in. I was this kid. I don't know what I'm doing. And he looked over and was like, he had shown me a couple kicks day one. And he was like, okay, every time I look over, I want to see you practicing these, because he was going to go check on the rest of the room. And he was so serious that I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen if he looks over and I'm not practicing these kicks. So me not knowing anything about body mechanics at that age just went 100% on every axe kick that I was throwing. By the time he came back to be like, okay, show me, I put my hands up and I fell over. And he caught me, thankfully, which was nice, but kept coming back and coming back. And yeah, like I said, I went to Junior Olympics one year and he was my coach and I got second there. So it worked out.
Oh, wow.
Worked out. But now I work for him. Where I teach kickboxing is actually through his martial arts studio now.
Interesting. There's so many.
You got to keep showing up. Fail and come back. Fail and come back. Just keep showing up. That is how you get better. You don't have a bad day once and then be like, I guess that's not for me, if you have any genuine interest in it.
Well, and that's a really good point, because it's something I've talked with some of the students that I used to work with, that it's okay to fail. You just need to fail forward. So you need to keep doing this. If you find yourself failing and failing backwards several times in a row, then you might need to kind of step back from it and kind of reevaluate maybe how you're doing it, and then get back into it again. Still do it.
Right. And there's definitely opportunities to, get a little introspective, do that evaluation, see how you're doing, and see if something really is for you. But I don't feel like a one-time go at things, especially when it comes to like physical pursuits. One time doesn't tell you everything you need. It takes trying things a little bit, because the first time you do something that your body is not used to at all, you're gonna look like a newborn giraffe trying to walk around like, what is happening? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But it's like, get your feet underneath you a little bit, and then you'll know, actually, it's like, okay, this is for me, I can really get into it, or maybe not. And it's like, hey, some other modality might be more appropriate, and that's fun. That's fine. But give things like a real try. That's some of my biggest advice to people, is like, give it more than once.
Okay, well, yeah, and that I think that's really sound advice, because it reminds me of things that my own dad had talked to me when I was younger about, that we need to try things, at least in his eyes, if it was something, just anything, not just athletic related, at least try something try something 3 times, and in some cases, like, give something maybe like a year and kind of figure out, do I really not like this, or what's going on, not just dismiss it immediately. Because I think back to when we first went snow skiing, I hated it because I was on my ass the entire time. I couldn't. This is not fun. Yeah, I see snow. I see people having fun. I said, I'm not having fun. I don't like this. But then if you keep going at it, and you get better, like you said, you get your feet underneath you, and you start understanding that, hey, now I can go down a bunny slope, or now I can go down the intermediate chair, or whatever, these kind of things, and and it starts either getting good to you, or you find that it just it doesn't really resonate with you very well. But you gotta hang in there long enough to figure that out. You don't want to give up on it too early, and then you may have actually given up on something that could have been really, really good to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found, because I had some natural athletic ability as a kid, and tried a few different things a number of times. But similarly, I tried snowboarding a handful of times, and I was like, you know what, either I'm gonna get hurt, or someone I'm gonna run into is gonna get hurt. Like, the winter sports, not my thing. I gave it a solid go, and not happening. It's like, you keep my feet solidly on the ground. That's my thing.
Yeah, see, and you gave it that good try, and that's what you learned from it. I didn't even give it a good try. I watched my brother try snowboarding way back when it first came out, and we used to skateboard back in the day. So we think, oh, okay, we could probably make a jump right over to snowboarding, and your weight's completely different on a skateboard versus a snowboard. And so he was on his ass the entire time. So it was kind of like you're trying to shift your weight when on the boards you would normally not be doing. So I'm like, okay, I think I learned from watching him. I don't think I want to try this right now.
Right, we're good.
Yeah, there's a reason why he's the older brother. I did learn something from him. I watched him try that.
Right.
So I'll stay with these sticks on my feet instead for a while. See how that goes.
Right, there you go.
But
you can learn the lesson without having to go through it.
Yeah, I got something going on up here every now and then. It is, but your point's well taken. That you have to kind of give it a good try. Don't just kind of do a one and done and then think, well, yeah, I already did that. I already know I don't like it. So, well, no, kind of hang in there a little longer, then really kind of look at all the angles and give it a, get back up a few more times and then kind of see where you're at.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
So what I'm really curious because go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I'm really curious about when you were talking about your junior Olympic competition, because I saw a short film about a young boxer that was almost at death's door due to an illness. And then she came back from that illness, which they never actually did figure out what it was. And she managed to get to the junior Olympic level. And the first time she made it, she lost to her opponent. But then the next year she came back and she won something, I remember. But just seeing all of her training and everything else that went into her getting to that level, what was it like for you training to get to the junior Olympic level?
It was hard. It was so hard. And I gave up a lot of time with friends. I gave up a lot of just, I don't know, say in my schedule, right? Because tonight we're doing sparring, tomorrow morning is Olympic training, and then after that you're going to teach a class, and I was there 6 days a week for a number of years, which was fine. I wanted that at that time. That wasn't like, there was a drive there to do that, but it was, I would say, one of the hardest things I have ever done, because you train so hard and so many hours for a few minutes in the ring, right? It's just a few minutes, and you have to go so hard and you have to be so fast and just solid. Like that decision making that you're doing, those months and months of training leading up to it, has to become so second nature that no matter what anybody does, because you don't know how they train, if they're predominantly right-footed or left-footed, or if they can switch it up like mid-air, especially with Taekwondo, it's a lot of kicks and a lot of people have like little trick shots that they'll do. You don't always know where people are coming from. You get used to the people that you spar with on a regular basis, but doing like some of the open competitions and the state competitions, you get a chance to kind of test how you're doing and then make it up to that next level. And that's one of those, just the training, the drills we would run and the running we would do, like uphill and then carrying each other and then leapfrogging over each other and then through each other. I mean, you're just like going like crazy. And it was one of those that now, teaching group fitness and doing one-on-one training, there are times I'll have people be like, you seem so happy, and like, you're asking me, like, this is hard, like, you're kind of mean. Like, no. No, I'm like a puppy dog compared to what I went through. Like, you guys are getting a really nice version here. But I did have one of my kickboxers start calling me the Punisher after a little bit. And I was like, it's just that I can see what you can do. And seeing that now and looking back at what we were being asked to do to train, it's like they saw what we could do. And when you're in it, you don't always see it. And that's where good coaches come along and can really get you there, because they can see what you can do even if you have no idea yet. You might have a goal, but you might have no idea how much you can actually do. And the folks that have been around it long enough and done it themselves, they can see that. And they kind of know how to nurture it. And sometimes nurturing that is not always like sunshine and rainbows. It's a little gritty, it's a little messy, and it's hard, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, that's very well said, and it's really interesting that you have. I think it's probably true of almost any, like you said, a good coach, a good teacher, a good mentor. Someone can see something in you that perhaps you can't see the extent of what you have to offer. They see it, and then they're going to try to help you get there so that you can believe it, and then you actually become it. And you become that identity that we started off actually this interview with. And I see Cesare saying, "You're such a badass, Angie," on YouTube.
Oh,
And
thank
hi,
you.
Captain Blackwood. Captain Blackwood's down in Las Vegas. Hola to you. Happy Monday, Captain Blackwood. But yeah, it's interesting that it's all from perspective too. Obviously, you've been through a whole other level of training for the things you've done in competition and levels, and then someone might be coming into you for, like you said, for the first time, doesn't know how to make a fist, doesn't know how to throw a kick or a roundhouse or anything else like that. And so to them, it's kind of like, dang, why are you so tough on me? It's like, no, this is part of the training, and we're going to get you to your next goal. And you can actually you might find out that you're actually not only liking this, but you're pretty freaking good at it too.
Right. And that's one of my favorite things, is getting to like have people get started, right? Because I feel like I have a personal responsibility to open that door for people to be able to try something that they might not always, because it's like, I legitimately, it doesn't matter how many punches or kicks I've thrown, I'm excited for you to try this for the first time. And even if you miss the bag, you tried it, right? And it's like, I'm going to be your biggest fan, and I get so excited. And I've had people, like, I'll come into class and I'm like, guys, I'm amped up tonight. And they're like, are you ever not? No. I'm like, but like, we're gonna do something cool, like, so whether it's someone's first day or they've been with me for 2 years, it's like there's something different for each person. So I don't ever want somebody to feel like less than just because it's day one, right? Like, this is new to you, of course it's going to be different. Like, that's fine. You walked through the door, a lot of people didn't, so get excited. So, and I think too, just because, like, I've had my own health issues to deal with, I get amped for people when it's like, if they've shared some of that with me too, where, hey, these are some things I'm dealing with. I'm like, man, I know how hard that is to walk through the door. Like, good on you. You're here.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, some people don't even take that step. It's wishful thinking. Oh man, I wouldn't mind trying some kickboxing. I think I'll watch Netflix or something. They don't even bother to look online and see, like, where's the nearest place that I might be able to sign up for a class. Let alone actually doing that as first step, and then like you said, physically walking through the door for that very first time can be intimidating as hell, depending on what your background is. Maybe you don't go to the gym and you don't do anything else, and you're just kind of like, I just want to try this. I watched Cobra Kai. I said I want to try doing this kind of thing. So, am I in the right place?
Sure, bring your headband. I'll do it with you. Like.
There you go.
That I feel like, right? Like that's part of my job, though, is to take some of that fear out of that. Because I know, walking into my studio, we're in a small space, but we've got rings hanging down, and we've got kettlebells and clubs and punching. Like, I get it. Walking in, like, that's going to be intimidating to see if you've never done that for the first time. So I want to take some of that fear out of it, where you can just kind of step into your own and be like, okay, let's try something. Like, be willing to be coached, because you can hurt yourself if you're not listening. But at the same time, like, let's do it. Like you said, fail forward.
Absolutely. And again, I've been in positions with some of my muggle jobs in the past where I was that
muggle jobs.
Yeah, I was that. Anyone that's from my current muggle job, if you're wondering how to join the chat, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, and that allows you access to the chat. Or same if you follow me over on Twitch, that should allow you to make comments or nice questions too. But yeah, I found myself, because I worked with primarily K through 12 students. So I was always in those positions where I am someone that's being looked up to, even if they didn't like me that particular day. I have to kind of know what I think their potential is, also how they can really kind of change things in terms of behavior, if that's what that was sent to me for different programs. And you just kind of have to know that I see so much potential in you, and this is how we're going to get there. And there's so many different ways to get there. And it's a really, really rewarding experience when you get to be a coach or a teacher or anything like that. It can also be somewhat heartbreaking too, when you see someone not reach that potential for different reasons, maybe nothing to do with coming to a kickboxing class. It could be something outside of class that's going on with them personally that's affecting this potential. I've had,
Right.
several of those kind of situations, but you keep pushing forward with it, as long as they want to do it. And even if they don't want to do it, you might push them. In your case, you might keep pushing them. Like you said, you have to know that, yeah, you think you're giving me 100%, but there's actually maybe 5% more you can give me tonight. So let's get back in there.
Right. No, and I'm gonna find it.
Absolutely. One of my directors at my old job was always talking about, Mark, you know what I like about when you talk to our students? Because I was working with some really, really difficult students, had a lot of behavioral issues. And he said, you'll calm them down, and then instead of like giving them ice cream or something, you get them back to work. And I was like, well, yeah, they're in class. I expect them to work on the assignment. If we have to take a minute off for me to kind of calm them down or whatever their issue is and hear them out, make them feel better about things, I'm not going to just say, okay, now you can leave, or yeah, now you can go watch TV or something. No, you're going back to your math assignment now. But that's part of my job. That's the way I look at it. And I think it's probably something similar for yourself as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there are times too, and I really do encourage people, as we're doing workouts and stuff. It's like if you have a legit like injury, something I need to know about, like please don't suffer through something just because I'm talking to a group in a bigger way. It's like, let's go, like, no, we got to keep it safe too. So there is a level of that as well, where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna push you. I want to get everything I can. Like, you should be a sweaty mess by the time I'm done with you, but not to the detriment of your health. Like, people are coming to see me to improve their health, not for me to just get them exhausted with no rhyme or reason to it, right? Like, it's got to make sense. It's got to be chasing certain goals. But, I have had people come to me with different shoulder, hip, knee injuries. Some folks that have had some major surgeries too. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, that's going to be a different set of circumstances for you, and that's where good teachers, good coaches, good trainers can personalize some of that. And, I'm always very open to that. But at the same time, it is, I think people come in and you're like, okay, but I really need you to tell me, like, don't hold back just because you think like, oh, she wants me to hit really hard. Like, yeah, but not if your wrist hurts. Like, if you had broken something not that long ago, don't punch with that side. Like, I will find you an alternative, and I've got them.
See, and that reminds me of once I built a trust with some of my students, especially some of the more, shall I say, manipulative students, that I said, no, if something's actually going on that happened from the weekend and you're being straight up with me, I do need to know this, because otherwise I'm going to treat you the way I normally treat you in class. But if you just had, you just got into a fight on Sunday and here we are on Monday, I need to know, what happened. Like, if you look kind of funny, or if you're like, you can't move you can't get your jacket off or something.
Right.
Like, so what happened to your shoulder? And then you don't want to talk to me about it. And I just treat you like you're just being difficult. It's like, well, no, that's not the case. Something actually happened. But in my case, I had to build up a trust that they would actually want to tell me. A lot of times that was a sign of weakness to them. So those guys being down in the hood, they're like, oh no, I'm cool. That's all good. It's all good. And it's like, well, how come you can't get out of your chair? Why are you still sitting there when we're getting ready to go next door?
Doesn't look all good.
Yeah, you put a little bit of weight on your arm, and like, oh, and you're wincing. It's like, okay, what happened? What's going on here? Yeah, and to kind of segue a little bit, and we'll kind of just jump all over as we have been. But where did the yoga piece come in for you? Because I know that's newer for you in terms of being a yoga instructor.
It is, yeah. I'm a very new yoga instructor, so I am still very much in awe as I go to other people's classes and I see their transitions and combinations and stuff. I'm like, wow, that was smooth, But that came in, it was kind of it had been in the back of my mind as like a long-term goal. Like, one of these days I think that would be great, because, having been in the martial arts world and then continuing to teach elements of that, through different self-defense classes and then the heavy bag kickboxing stuff, it's like, you're teaching people how to move their bodies all day. And that's one of the things I love about being a trainer too, is, when I have people working with me one-on-one, just getting those different movement patterns down, and like, you get to tell your body what to do. And that's so fucking cool, like, that's the thing. And so in the back of my mind, I was like, man, that just takes a different level of practice to get into yoga, and I wanted to be very respectful of it. And at the same time, I had this opportunity come up during all the COVID closures where it was like, I'm not allowed to be in the studio. I can only train so much. You know, it's just fitness was not happening. I was teaching some Zoom classes like in my driveway out front. Like I had to text my neighbors and be like, hey, if you hear me yelling, everything's fine. Like, I'm teaching a class. So if you drive by, just mind your business, you know, and that was fine. But it was one of those things that I had just enough extra time that I decided to sign up for a yoga teacher training. And I was like, man, I'm going right into the deep end. Like, I don't know if I have a consistent enough practice to even be like, who am I to step in front of a room right now? I don't know. And I was not prepared for how important that was going to become for me, because that did come along in a tumultuous time where it was like, okay, there's COVID closures, you're stuck at home, life is just getting turned upside down, and it became this really big personal sanctuary for me. It's like, you know, the studio has always been that for me. I've always been able to turn to fitness in one way or another. Even when I was at my sickest, you know, it's like I had that, and I'll circle back to that, but I had that drive to find a way to move. And so when you are stuck at home all the time, and I was like, I had this little corner in my room and I would lay out a yoga mat and just dove into that teacher training and practicing. And one of the things to get my 200-hour was we had to film, I think it was 15 hours of us teaching. So you had to really get used to cueing and breathing at the right time and putting together your own sequences and that kind of thing. And it was really helpful. And I was like, gosh, to come along at such a stressful time and be able to take that deep dive. And there were times I'd get into a practice and I would finish it just in tears. I was like, what the hell just happened? You know, because it would just hit this kind of deep spot. You hit that introspective thing and doing a little soul searching, and they're not lying. You get into some of those like deep hip openers and it's like, woof, tears to the ears, like, holy cow, it's different. So it's one of those, and I'm like, you don't need any equipment for it, you just need a little bit of space, and the benefits of it are so huge. I was like, this is one of those things I can be teaching people to do long term at any stage of the game. And that was where I had kind of in the back of my mind, I was like, at some point, I don't know if, you know, my knees are always going to want me to be kicking things, but I can probably always hit a yoga mat. You know, that'll be one of those things. I just don't see myself not being in the fitness world one way or the other. So I like to load up the tool belt as much as I can. So it came up a lot sooner than I expected it to. And now I'm like so glad that it did. And that's been a fun thing, because I'm like, man, you can make it as challenging as you want. You can make it as gentle as you need it to be. And it's just, yoga's always there for you, as cheesy as that sounds, but it is always there for you. And it's been a very like humbling place to come to and be like, look, I came into it kind of not realizing how deep a dive I was taking, and then being like, okay, I'm going to step in front of the room and share this with people. And that was a scary thing. So I was like, you know, when it comes to teaching people how to punch and kick, I've been doing that for years. So then to move in a much different way, I was like, okay, here we go. Just going to do it. So, but that's been good too. You know, I've done some regular classes, but then too have done some special events out at Sky River Mead. And I do something called the Vinyasa Viking yoga sessions, because look at me. So, so I'll do like battle braids, and we'll put on like Celtic folk music. And then after we're done with the yoga class, we'll do a mead tasting, and it's a good time. So that's one of those fun elements that you can put to a serious practice as well. So yeah, that was a long way to answer that question, but that's how that came about.
Well, no, thank you for sharing that. I think it's wonderful that you tried something new and it came along at a time that was, you know, so difficult for all of us. And
yeah,
I in a small way I can relate to it, because during COVID last year, for me, I was really kind of lost. All of this stuff, well, not virtual stuff, but all the in-person stuff had stopped for me.
Right.
Just like you were saying, fitness,
Right.
you didn't have a studio to go to, and you can have students come there and all that kind of thing. And many of the guests I talked to, one set of sisters in particular, the theme kept coming up about trying something new. They kept telling their fans, try something new at home. And that could just be something like rearranging your bedroom. They were trying to use small examples. It doesn't cost money. It's something you can just actually do to kind of switch it up. And I kept thinking, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. And then I kept thinking, well, what am I doing that's new? And I really wasn't doing anything. Because, well, I have so much going on. I was making excuses for myself.
Right.
And so they were actually my inspiration. I said, you know what would be something that I could try that's new artistically that would kind of scare me? Like I've never felt I was good at it. I never wanted to venture into it. And it was drawing / painting. Because I thought, it's never been my thing. I've always tried it. I always thought it was terrible, so I would never do it anymore.
Right.
And I said, well, no, I'm going to listen. I'm going to put some of their music on and kind of see what, get some canvas and some paint and see what the hell happens. And I started doing some of that stuff, and it was really interesting to find out how cathartic it was, because it was something that I was not used to doing. And so it was scary. It was like, and this is something that no one ever had to see. I could have just said, yeah, I tried something and it didn't work. That was it. But I ended up, I ended up doing it, and two of them are back here, right here on my wall behind me.
There you go.
That I'd done, and there's some more above it that my camera's cutting off. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, again, for you found something that was really, really much more of a deep dive than you thought initially that you're going to get into, and how much it was going to affect you. And that's
Right.
wonderful when you're not. Life can be really random that way. Sometimes you think, oh, this is really kind of something different, something new, and you don't realize, wow, this is really going to have a profound impact on you.
Right.
And, yeah,
Right.
and I see Andrew saying hello to you. I'm sorry, Andrew, I can't pronounce your last name from YouTube. I'll just spell it Panagiootis. I don't know if that's anyone that you recognize, Angie, but he's saying hello, and we'll just go from there. So,
hey.
But let's see. Oh, hi, Steve. You know those sisters very well because you're a huge fan of them. Well, and Steve, it's good to see you from, I want to say it's Wichita Falls, Texas, correct? It's not Houston. Like I kept effing up with you. I'm so sorry. I'm pretty sure that I have your.
Get it together, Mark.
I know. Steve's been a huguge supporter of what I do, and I kept saying anytime he came into the chat that, oh yeah, Steve's joining us from Houston, and that's where my friend Ken lives. So I guess I got them mixed up together, thinking, well, Steve's down there too. It's all Texas, right? And then Steve corrected me during one of the more recent live streams. Like, I guess that's probably why Mark keeps thinking I'm from Houston, because Ken was in the same chat at the same time. So that's why I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And Steve, he corrected me about where he actually lives in North Texas.
So funny.
Oh yeah, he just said yes, thanks. Okay, great, Steve, great. I'm glad.
There you go.
Yeah, Wichita Falls.
No, get it squared away.
All right, I'm already winning. Okay. So people are just joining us right now. Angie has a very extensive martial art background. She's talking about Taekwondo, kickboxing classes she does, personal training she does. She's been doing yoga instruction recently. And is there any other realm that we haven't touched on that is also kind of, is there a third thing that are you doing Pilates? Are you doing any kind of dance work, massage therapy stuff?
No. My friends that teach dance, they would just laugh at me because, and I have one friend in particular who's also been kind of a good guiding light for me when I got into the trainer world. But she teaches more modalities that have a dance element to them, and I've told her, I was like, girl, my hips do not move that way. Like I want to kick things and I can't I try, and my kickboxing students, they will straight up tell you, I dance in class all the time and it is not good. It's just this is just for me. This is my move. That's all we got. And it's plenty. So no, those are kind of my go-tos. Yeah. I do I will, with the one-on-one training, I'll do a lot more strength work, and I do incorporate a lot of kettlebells. I use heavy clubs. I use rings. I'll do some dumbbell work. But so much of what I do is about full body fitness. It's not just, I don't want to build you like a bodybuilder. You know, that's not the goal. I've told a few of my clients, I'm like, my big goal for people that come to work with me is like, I want you to deadlift until you're 90 if you want to. And I want you to, if you're hiking somewhere in the Pacific Northwest and you fall, you could pull yourself off that cliff. You don't have to wait for someone to come save you. Measurable goals. It's like, but at the same time, it's like, I'm not chasing someone to just like get an exact bicep measurement, or, you know, I want to get your waist down to this. That's not me. I'm not your trainer for that. But if you want to move better, feel better, yes.
Okay. And for some reason, when you're talking about perhaps your lack of dance skills because you want to kick things, I was picturing you like, you know, like in a dance competition or something, yeah, and you end up kicking your partner or something just because that's your knee-jerk reaction is to sit there and...
Right, like those waivers got to be tight because it's not good. I stay in my lane when it comes to that. I know.
Well, it's always good to be self-aware.
Right, it's important.
It's kind of important in life, especially when you get to be my age.
Just saying.
Yeah. But something else that I would like to touch on is that everyone, including myself, I've talked about you know, my own struggles I've had. You know, no one's perfect, and especially if you look at someone's social media account, you might think, oh yeah, look at the life they lead. Well, that's that glossy thing that people put out there. And some people go the other route. They do try to put something really raw when they're not having a good day or what have you. I tend to just only talk about it in spurts during my live streams when I've talked about mental health, or I've talked about when things are kind of shitty for me or what have you. But I know you're personally dealing with something that you've been very open about with Crohn's disease. And so like for people who have no idea like what that is or, you know, what it entails, can you kind of bring people up to speed on what you've been you know, working and dealing with?
Yeah, so Crohn's is a really sexy disease. It's a chronic gut inflammation. So what can happen is you can have symptoms anywhere from like anywhere in the GI tract, basically. But it is an inflammatory bowel disease. So for myself, there is a particular spot in the intestines, and it's essentially there's an autoimmune element to it where it's like there are things that are supposed to be there and your body's like, no, they're not. And it doesn't matter how much you tell your body to like, hey, calm down, everything's fine. It can have these big reactions. So there can be ulcerations, inflammation, fatigue is a big thing I deal with. I will say like I'd hesitate a little bit just because it affects different people so differently. So I don't want if anyone's listening and I've left out one of your symptoms, I'm not trying to. But it is one of those things where many folks will deal with like just different foods can trigger a flare. There's a lot of nausea. There's a lot of just, you know, your stomach's not okay. Things in the gut are not working as they should be. So for myself, just in a couple weeks, actually, I'm scheduled to have surgery to have a section of intestine removed because it's so damaged. And they'll do a little resection and life will go on, and that's fine. But what was happening was there were times I would end up in the hospital and I kind of knew the routine. And it's sort of strange to know the emergency room routine when you're like, okay, I'm so nauseous, I can't keep water down. You know, and it was that one section was getting so inflamed and there was enough scar tissue. It was like nothing was moving. So it's an obstruction, right? So everything's just stuck. So they'd give me anti-nausea stuff. They would give me painkillers and they would have to rehydrate me because if you're not keeping water down, you know, just throwing up. Like I said, it's a really sexy disease. It's one of those things. It can get really dangerous that way. So there are folks that have been up against it in a big way. I was diagnosed with Crohn's right after high school. So it was one of those where it's like so exhausted, and it seemed like no matter what I did, it was just not quite helping. But what I was doing was kind of like, I was taking something like 18 pills a day. I didn't really know what to eat because things that had been okay suddenly were making me sick. So it took a lot of time and a lot of trial and error. And at the time when I was diagnosed, I feel like the science was not as good as it is now, as far as Crohn's disease is concerned. There's a lot more resources now. I feel like there's a lot more outreach now. Because at the time that would have been like 2005, so we're talking quite a while ago. But it was one of those things that it felt very lonely, and that's part of why I'm always so open about it. It's like, hey, here are the things I've dealt with. And I've had people that have been recently diagnosed that have reached out and they're like, hey, can I just talk to you about this a little bit? Absolutely. So it's one of those that will hit real hard and real fast. I've had times where I'm supposed to teach a class on a Saturday morning and I woke up at 2, 3 in the morning, nauseous and just on the bathroom floor, like, well, I better get somebody to cover my class. There's no way. And just trying to stay hydrated and saying like, okay, what's that tipping point where, when do I go to the emergency room? Or is this going to pass and I'll be okay? And that level of uncertainty of when might this happen? How am I going to deal with it? Who can drive me? It's a scary thing. And, thankfully I've got a really good support network as far as that goes, between friends and family that are there to help. But it's tough. It's tough. So I don't take it lightly when people share their struggles with me with that or any other condition, because it's like you really don't know what people are going through. And if you were to just see me walking down the street, you'd be like, well, she's perfectly healthy. Well, I'm a really healthy sick person. I have to go in and get infusions every 6 weeks. Like, I still have a little bit of a bruise on the back of my hand from the one last week, and it took 2 tries to find the vein. But from that, it's like, okay, I spend part of my day there and I get 6 weeks where I'm usually doing pretty good. But a lot of that too was a little bit of, that gritty work that we talked about before. When I had first been so sick, it just seemed like, okay, that's it. I'm just sidelined now. And you do that for a little while. And when you have been an athlete in the past, and I'm sure some folks watching this can understand, it's like when you have that little bit of drive and it gets taken from you, you didn't decide not to do it. That little bit of drive is always kind of there. So I started out just walking. I would go on short walks every now and then. And initially when I started doing that, and again, this was many years ago, but that was how I got back on my feet, was just getting to the mailbox sometimes was exhausting. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I had to dig really deep. Like, it meant more to me than, again, just that goal of like, well, I want to walk a mile. It was like, no, I want to like do stuff. I'm not ready to be sidelined, so it was little walks here and there. One of my aunts, she was on me. She kept showing up to go for walks. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this. But we kept going. And eventually I did a half marathon with the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. And that was one of the, I still wasn't like in great condition at that point. I walked a lot of that half marathon and I finished it and I cried and I was like, never again. And then I did another 18 after that over the following years and a couple full marathons with the help. But I trained with some of the folks that you and I work with, and, just built it back up. And it was during that time that and again, this is over the span of a few years, I was playing with different things nutritionally, what would work for me, because it's not the same for every person. It's not the same for every Crohn's patient. So if you have a friend who at one point cut out gluten and that worked really well for them, it's like, that's great for them. That might not work for every other Crohn's patient. So I caution people to be really careful with autoimmune diseases, throwing out anecdotal things, sometimes it's helpful, but I promise you the person who's dealing with it has tried. They've tried. And that took just a lot of years of trial and error to figure out the things that worked for me. And even with that, it's like, yeah, you put in all that work, and I do these workouts and I eat pretty well and, stay hydrated and do the meditation and all the things. And I still get sick sometimes. So to come to terms with that, we were talking about mental health a little bit previously, is like, that's a heavy lift in and of itself, to be like, you're going to do all this work and you're still going to get sick. Okay. How much worse would it be if I wasn't doing all that work, though? And that's not an easy place to come to. I don't want to say it like it was just a flip that got flipped, or switch that got flipped, but it is one of those things. I mean, there were some dark days dealing with that, where you're like, you mean I'm going to do all this and I'm still going to have to go to the hospital? Like, yeah. But what if you weren't doing all that? What would that look like? It's not good.
Wow. Well, one, thank you for sharing that. I think it's important when people take it upon themselves to share things personally that they're going through, and like you said, someone could reach out to you that just got diagnosed with it, and like you said, it's different things for different people, but you can share some things that you went through when you first got diagnosed that might help that person kind of be a little bit better about things. And I see that Captain Blackwood's saying that that he's talking about a saying that we are never truly alone on this planet, and that's very true. You kind of think you are at the time.
Yeah.
And I see hi Prince, I saying you're the healthiest sick person I know.
Oh, that's Prince. There she is.
I can
one
smell
of my
Prince.
best mentors ever.
I can smell Prince now. I was just talking to her about, I love the scent that she wears in her office, and it's actually on her.
Right.
And then Steve's saying such a good positive attitude from you, Angie. So there's some really supportive comments already from people, and yeah, it's I'm thinking to myself, and there's a lot of similarities in terms of that, like in my case, if you're talking about mental health struggles, that it's not the same for everybody. And so like you said, someone might find out, hey, when I cut out gluten, then my Crohn's symptoms seem to get better. It's like, well, in my case, maybe I did this for mental health, and that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It doesn't mean there's all kinds of other things and you really have to kind of, unfortunately, put in the time and put in the work to kind of figure out what is going to work for you. And some of that might be really, like you were saying, it might make you actually feel worse. But now you can't do these things in your mind, or maybe somebody told you, or you read something online, you put these things together. Oh yeah, this will make you feel better anytime that you want to have, I don't know, let's say ice cream or dairy or something, and you have these conditions, and then you find, holy crap, I actually felt worse when I did those things.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of those, so I get it.
Yeah, no, and it's really great that that you're, like you're saying, I think it was actually from Schwarzenegger who was recently talking about where sometimes it's so easy to get focused on like what you didn't accomplish instead of what you did. And like what you're talking about, hey, if I do all this work and I still might get sick, that's really defeating. But at the same time, like you said, what if I didn't do all this work? How much worse could it potentially be? So it's that whole perspective thing of how are we looking at the issue at hand, and trying to, make the best of it. And everyone's allowed those times to, like, what, this day fucking sucks. And you have to allow yourself those moments.
Yeah, have your bad day. Have it. Take it. That is yours. Just don't unpack and live there. Have a day. Then keep going.
Yeah, very well said. I've told people the same thing. So if you need to have that moment, have that day, have that hour, what have you. But yeah, if you keep staying there and making it your home, then there's bigger issues at hand, and you probably need some help with that. But if you just try to deny it, we're like, oh yeah, I'm doing great, it's like, no one's doing great all the time. That's just not realistic.
That's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You need to, and that's why I do that too. There's days when I'm like, I told this to one of my guests before we went live. No, this day has been really rough on me, and I'm not saying that to make you feel bad before we go live, but I'm just being honest about it. And she, it's funny, we actually started commiserating about our days because she wasn't having the best day either, but she didn't want to be unprofessional by not showing up for the interview. And I was like, well, then we're in the same boat. Then we can just sit there and be kind of miserable. We'll be miserable together for a little while. And then maybe the interview will make us feel better, and it actually did.
And that's to that comment earlier. You're never truly alone, you know, and sometimes it just takes talking about it.
Yeah, and I see Captain Blackwood saying, I had that day yesterday, quote unquote, that day. Called out and recharged my batteries, and here I am feeling better. Yeah, that's great. That's great, Alex. I'm glad to hear that. And you're true. And it's true. When you know you're having that day, then you just need to you need to process it. You need to process through it and let it do what it's going to do, and then you move on. So,
big time.
Yeah.
I got some good advice recently too. I was having a time. It was just a rough time. It was a rough few weeks that were going on, and I had somebody who was like, you know what, do that. Take your time. Chill. They said, but once you're ready, and you're gonna feel it, once you're ready, get out of your house. They were like, take a couple days, do your thing, but make sure you're not like working from home too much. You're doing your thing, but get out of your house. I was like, oh, that's a good call.
It is, because you can get, especially the last year and a half, you can get inside your head too much, I think. So if you're having a bad day or several bad days, something needs to kind of break that up. And I know I went through that period last year on the Alice tour, which is the virtual tour that started all of these interviews for me. It was so hard knowing that I had an interview to do pretty much every single day at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And if I'm already having a bad day outside of that, I'm like, oh crap. But I didn't want to let the band down. I didn't want to let the guests down that I had booked, all those kind of things. And but it really kind of was a trying period that ended up being really good for me, because it kind of showed me that, you went through that period that was really rough, but somehow you got through it. And in some ways you actually got better because of it. And it was, I'm thinking back to a specific day last year that it was awful. That day was terrible. And yet somehow we still managed to go through with what we needed to do. And I know the band felt the same way. We were all collectively feeling terrible one particular day because of what was going on out in society. And it was weighing down on all of us. But it's like, hey, we got a show to do, and we've got other bands that are booked, and fans are in the chat waiting for us. And so that became our focus. Let's put our blinders on. We'll block the stuff out, do what we love doing, and then after that, we'll go back to that crap.
Right?
Maybe.
There you go.
Yeah.
And it is through some of those days where you get challenged in kind of a big way that you learn a little bit about yourself and the people that are around you, and where you can lean and where you got to pull back. And it's, that's one of those things I've struggled with personally, is just setting those boundaries around time a little bit and being like, yeah, this is the thing I'd love to do, but not today. And it's hard. It's really hard. So that you had a group around you where it's like, look, we're all having a day, but we're going to do this thing. Like, that's huge.
It is. And I totally agree with you, because it becomes something where I'm a very empathetic person, so I tend to take on other people's feelings based on what's going on with them, and it could be to my detriment. So someone might maybe they're having a really bad day and they want to spout off to me, and I'll be maybe perhaps kind enough to actually listen to it when I'm actually having my own struggles that day. And I've had to learn to say, I understand that you're having a really rough day, but this isn't really the best time for me because I'm having my own struggles. And that's a hard thing for me to tell somebody, because I'm so used to just listening and just always being there to listen and be the sounding board and all those kind of things. But at some point, I had to figure out where those boundaries were, because it was affecting me. It's like, well, why do I keep doing this to myself, or I'm just going to be in a hole for maybe weeks on end because I'm taking on everyone else's problems and I have my own. So it's like, I had to reprioritize myself, and that became something really, really important. I see Ruby E saying Angela is pretty cool, I guess, as her sister. LOL.
Yep, that's my sister. She's
Well,
pretty okay too.
well, and I can always, and most people that have been watching my streams know that 99% of the time my mom is watching these live. So if my mom's there, I don't know if she's going to say anything in the chat,
Hey.
but most of the time she's
Hey,
there.
Mark's mom.
Yeah, she's been a strong supporter, and my dad has too. I don't want to dismiss him, but my mom's usually always trying to tune into these things, and she's the one that got me into bringing me to my first concert when I was 9 years old and all that kind of stuff. So it's but yeah, no, it's hard to say until you say it. Yeah, Steve, you're right. It becomes something that you learn to know what's best for you, but at the same time, still being available to other people within reason. And that's where those boundaries come up. And yeah, I think I mean, I can speak to this. If anyone's still here in the chat or watching from our Muggle job, where Angie and I encountered each other, that I've told this to people that it's the first job though I felt comfortable enough to actually say what I do outside of work so soon. And most places they actually never found out that I did anything like this. I would be in a photo pit. I would be covering stuff. They just never found out because I never felt comfortable telling them. So it says a lot about the people where we work. That there's some really, really good, kind-hearted people there that have treated me very, very well, and that yeah, most of them know about what I do. They may, again, that's why friends and whoever else might be watching this right now, watching it down the road. Yeah, thank you for taking the time and for making me feel so welcome at where we're at. I'm not going to say where we work, but where we do things at.
Right.
But it's and I wish everyone else can find the similar places and similar surroundings to be around that kind of foster that, where you feel comfortable being who you are and wanting to talk about what you do instead of trying to hide it and having a secret life or whatever it is.
Right? It's a big deal. And I was so encouraged there. Like I said, a lot of good people to lean on, in some of the times where I was my sickest and, just trying to figure it out and trying a bunch of different nutritional things. The number of nutritional things I've brought into that place where people are like, what are we talking about now? It's not surprising. But at the same time, that it was very open arms, just, okay, well, let's talk about it, or I'd have some crazy idea for a class and they're like, okay, well, let me know when. Like, it's great.
Yeah,
good.
So
yeah, people need that. People need that.
They do. I mean, it's such a huge, like, intangible piece to the workplace. It's like if you're a sports person, it's the whole thing. It doesn't show up in a stat sheet. That type of personality, that type of nurturement, that type of acceptance. We definitely need those kinds of things for everybody. Everybody needs some level of that, because then you have a chance to really show who you are and also what those other aspects to you. Because like if somebody saw me at our Muggle job and they only knew that side of me, they're thinking, well, this guy just does this for 9 to 5 job, and I have no idea what he does when he leaves here. And they probably don't think about it.
Right.
But then the ones that do know, they're like, and I've said this to many people, they're like, God, you're so busy. Well, yeah, that happened today, being Monday. They said, Mark, how was your weekend? I said, well, it's productive. So how busy were you? So I start rattling off, well, I had this live stream interview and I had this thing at the Seattle Opera and then I had this thing over here. And then they just said, how do you do all this? I said, I don't know. It's something that I choose to do. And yeah, don't worry, Prince. I won't give away your secret hiding place at work. And I see. Okay, so your sister is saying that we definitely need to chat at work, because I have not talked with your sister at work. I know where she sits.
Oh, you really should. She's pretty great. 10 out of 10 would recommend to a friend. She's pretty solid.
Cool. Yeah, no, I've again, such a talented staff, and even today I was talking to somebody there who is going to be in a play. And I was like, oh wow, that's awesome, because I review lots of local theater here, and I've never been to her theater up north. So she was telling me more about it, and there's a dress rehearsal on Thursday, but I'm doing a live stream on Thursdays, so I can't go. All these kind of things, but it's just so nice having the place and perhaps even the platform to be able to speak about things that I'm very passionate about. It's part of what drives me and gets me up in the morning. And that's not to say that I don't work hard when I'm at the Muggle job, because I'll give that everything I have too. But
right, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, like apparently other people have told me the same thing, which is great. I love it. It's like I will give you 100% there. That whole thing that I've talked about, you work hard and you play hard and you don't work hard. In my case, I do kind of work hard, but I'm trying to get more of the play in there.
Right.
But
yeah, and that's where too, when people tend to say, because I hear a similar thing where people are like, God, you're so busy. I'm like, yes, but like it's full, but it's full with things I enjoy doing. And there are times, I mean, Grant, I have more than a couple times bit off way more than I can chew, and I'm like, okay, I got to pump the brakes on like everything. I'm so sorry. I just need a day, and that's happened too. But when you are pursuing those things that you enjoy, it's very easy to like, well, yeah, every day's full, but it's not just busy for the sake of being busy. You're honing your craft, and that's something different.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because for me, on my side of things, I clearly love doing this. I kind of joke that it's a bit of a sickness, but I love meeting new people. I love learning about new artistic things, especially if it's something that I don't have a background on, like such as filmmaking. So talking to like the director that's coming on Thursday, I love that kind of thing, because I'm all ears. I want to hear about what did you have to do to make this thing that I just watched a week ago. And I'm fascinated by it. And now with this whole virtual medium that you can talk to anyone literally around the world. So I've talked to guests in more than 25 different countries that I never thought I would ever talk to people in Siberia and South Africa and Kazakhstan and all these different places. And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful aspect of what's happened with the virtual world. And so to me, it's one of the the pluses, if you can call it a plus, during that came from the pandemic, one of those little bright spots. It's also, and like in your case, you're getting a chance to talk about not only with your martial art and your yoga background, but also with Crohn's and things that has been a personal battle for you. And that, like you said, you said it very well about if somebody saw you walking down the street, it's like, oh yeah, she's healthy, she's fine, there's no issues with her. And it becomes that whole thing. You really don't know what someone's going through at any given time. They think, oh yeah, Mark's talking to all these guests, and he's going to all these shows, and he's doing all these kind of things. He must, he's living the life. It's like, I could barely pay my rent for a while. I, was struggling with all kinds of other things. So there's that whole other side that everyone can relate to, because everyone has those issues. Some just choose not to talk about it, or they don't, expose it. And I was one of those people for a long time, but after a while, it's like, you know what? I think I need to kind of do that, because I felt like I was almost presenting a false sense of myself to people, because they kept thinking, yeah, look at all the fun stuff you get to do. And it's like, well, yeah, it is fun stuff. I also worked hard for it. And there's also another side to it too. That's, not so fun. And that's just part of being human. So. Yeah. Wow. I see it's been an hour and 18 minutes.
Holy cow, Mark, what are we doing?
Yeah. But you know what? To be honest with you, in terms of a one-on-one interview with a guest, we haven't even come close to the record yet. So.
Oh, really? What's your record?
That was
going off. How long?
I want to say it was about 2.5 hours with a guest from Portugal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a long one. But I don't want to wrap this up just yet, but let's see, our human adventure changed in 2020 for some of us, for the better. Captain Blackwood said, so again, in Captain Blackwood's case, he's someone that I met through the Alice tour. I'm a strong supporter of the band, someone who has been a strong supporter of what I do, and then we've never met yet, but we will one of these days, because I know you're down in Vegas, and we love Alice, and they're going back on tour, and they're doing the LA show on Friday. When things get to a point where, like, either financially or whatever else can happen for me, that I can actually, because I want to fly and actually see the band with some of the fans that I've met virtually but haven't met in person yet. So it's going to happen. But again, that's one of those unique pluses that came from the pandemic, when it's been such a dark time for so many other reasons. But
Right.
there's been a little bit of some bright spot stuff in there, a little bit.
Right. I feel like it sort of like shook up the Etch-a-Sketch a little bit. You had to really decide, like, okay, what needs to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's been something that I talked with many guests during last year about. So when we get past this, quote unquote, what kind of changes are you going to make? Everyone's had time to reflect on things during 2020. So it's like, what are you going to do when it's 2021 or 2022? And then as things started to open up, it became proof is in the pudding. So are you actually adhering to some of those changes you wanted to make, or are you just kind of falling back to, hey, it's all back to what it was? And for me, I've been trying to hold tight to things that I said I was going to change, and so far I'm doing it, so that's good.
Got it.
Yeah. I've been trying to hang on to those things because it's so easy just to kind of just revert back to, like, you know what, I'm just going to go do what I was doing in 2019 because that's what I just feel comfortable with. But I told myself, no, you're not going to go back there. You need to stay this new course and stay on it because it's going to be some really beneficial things for you. And yeah, you're right, Steve. Wichita Falls, 2nd of November. That's when Alice will be right in your city. So they're wonderful people. Definitely hang around and talk to them if you go see them at the show there. I can't say enough good things about those people and that band. So, but Angie, in your case, so you're going to be taking a bit of a break, which you've already kind of mentioned because you have a procedure coming up. And so,
right.
Are you kind of just playing it as it comes in terms of when you start working your way back, or do you already have a plan in your head of what you want to be doing? And when you were talking about goals and all that kind of stuff early on in this interview, I'm just kind of curious, what do you kind of think? Where's your head at?
Well, it will surprise no one that knows me that I've got a plan with the understanding that I won't be able to implement until I can implement. And what I mean by that is, like, I can't set a start date for when I'm going to do things. I need to be really kind of fluid in my methods because I've had to start over with my fitness 1,000 times. This is going to be the biggest undertaking I've had to do probably since I was first diagnosed. So I have an idea, but it was one of those when I first talked to the surgeon about, hey, what's recovery time look like for this? He was like, yeah, most people are back to the office in about 2 weeks. And I was like, no. Here's what my job is, and I started explaining that I teach kickboxing and yoga and, I lift things up and put them down. And he was like, 6 weeks. Because you cannot be doing any core work. I can't have you doing rotational movements. This really needs to heal. So 6 weeks with no exercise for someone who does that daily, and it's just part of my routine, right? That's a big shift. That's a big shift. So there again, it's like, well, what am I going to be allowed to do? And I was talking to my boss at the studio, and he and I were kind of joking. I was like, well, maybe I could sit there with a dumbbell. And he goes, no, because you'll sit there and I know what you're going to do. You're going to have that core engagement because that's how you do it properly. And I was like, okay. And then he very politely told me, I don't want to see your face in here until the doctor says it's okay. So it's like, okay, understood. So there's a few things where it's like, I have an idea of what I want to do to kind of get back on track after that, but I am trying to give myself a lot of grace in my methods and timing for how that's going to look. So that's hard. That is hard. But this last year, my biggest lesson in this last year has been asking for help. Because for a long time, I was like, well, this is my thing to deal with. And in so many areas, just like, I need to handle this. I was not good at asking for help. And by the time I did, it was way too late and I would downplay it way too much, like what I actually needed a hand with. So this year it's been like, here's the whole mess, guys. Help. And actually, my sister has been a huge help with that. So has Prince. And, I've got a lot of really solid people in my circle. It would take a while to name them all, but there's some heavy hitters in there and they know who they are. So it's one of those where it's been a big lesson. I'm trying to do better at asking for help, but at the same time, like, okay, just be okay with that. People would rather have you be like, hey, I need a hand, than have you trying to figure it out when it's something they could easily do to help like get you back up. You know, it's like, my cup's a little empty. Can you?
Isn't it interesting that when you finally got to that point, whatever that point was for yourself, when you decided to try to ask for more help from people, because it has to be a process. Because I can actually completely relate to that, because that's how I was brought up. Very much that you try to do everything autonomously, do everything that you can on your own, and if you can't figure it out, spend some time and try to figure it out on your own, and you don't really ask for help. Particularly being a Japanese male, that it's something that's the whole stoic Japanese cultural thing, that you need to be able to do these things, because otherwise, if you're asking for help, that whole cliche of it being a sign of weakness. And in my case, it was, I'm still, it's a work in progress. It's not something that I readily say, hey, yeah, you know what, I could really use some help with this. I'm better at it, so I'm taking some baby steps toward it. But I'm curious about for yourself, when you were starting to get to that point of like, yeah, like you said, you know, everybody, here's the whole mess, and I really could use some help. Because that really makes you feel, I would think, pretty vulnerable, and also like,
yeah,
how are they going to react to this? You know, because you also feel a little bit of guilt, I think, of like, well, now I'm kind of burdening somebody that's trying to help me, you know, get me to an appointment or do whatever else I need help with.
Yeah, because there is a certain level, and for, you know, a couple of my friends and family in particular, where it's like, I'm never going to be able to repay you. I know, like, you don't know how much it means to me that you were there. For my friend Missy, actually, her and her husband came over one day, my last flare. It was so early in the morning, and I was like, I don't even know who to get a hold of. And she happened to text me about something else. And I was like, girl, I am on the floor. And she was like, I'm on my way. You know, like, so her and her husband came over. They brought me water, Pepto, any anti-nausea stuff they could think of, and just like hung out. And, you know, that was one of those, I'm like, you don't know what that means. Like, you just don't know. Up until my mom got here and then took me to the emergency room, and, you know, because I'm like, there's no way I'm doubled over. I can't hardly stand up, you know. It was not an option. So it was one of those, and, you know, my friend's sitting here and she's being so patient with me, because she's like, so when do you think it's time to go to the emergency room? And I was like, give it a minute. She's like, how many more times are you going to throw up before you throw in the towel here? I was like, maybe one more time, you know. But it was like, it took a friend being there and just sitting there and being frustrated with me, and me, you know, I can't fake a good mood, you know, right? Like, that's a very raw thing to show somebody, and I get uncomfortable, because you know, it's just one of those. I think I've always tended to be kind of a caretaker. I want people to feel comfortable. I want them to be like, you're good, whatever's happening. You know, that's just a natural tendency that I have. So when it's like, I know it's not comfortable to sit there and watch your friend not doing well, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, that's a very raw thing. But it's like, okay, but I trust you also, and I need to let some of that go. Like, you're fine. You would not have offered to come over if you could not handle what was happening here, right? So it is, it's uncomfortable. I'm learning to get better with it, but it is one of the, I think, because, like I said, even from a young age, you know, it's just like, one, I wanted to be taken seriously. Like, I was a big goofball, but I still wanted to be taken seriously. And two, I wanted people to know that they could trust me. And I don't know exactly where that came from, but it was like, no, I'm like really responsible. So you start taking that on with other things and other people, and too much, and to my own detriment in certain times, trying to make sure like everyone else is okay. I'm good. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. It's like, not always though, you know, and people would rather help you than have you fake it that you're fine when you're not.
Well, one, thank you for sharing that. And two, it's something where it reminds me of, so for people that don't know, right out of college, I was a public school teacher. And after doing that for a few years, our counseling department at my particular building was saying, Mark, you're so good with the students. You have such a way about you. You should really consider going back and getting your certificate to be a counselor because you're so good. And they think that I would fall right into that role. And I told them, I said, no. I see what you guys deal with every day. Your job's never done. I don't want to do that. But but I was flattered I understood why they were saying it. And it's still true to this day about, like you were saying for yourself, kind of being the caretaker. You want people to feel good and feel safe and feel welcome around you. So then when you're having issues, you don't want them to know that. So you just kind of deal with it on your own. And in my case, sometimes I had a friend at actually one of my more recent jobs a few years ago. She nicknamed me the counselor of our department, just because I was the one that would listen to people. I was kind of intuitive when there was an issue going on with somebody who was having a rough day, a rough whatever. I would talk to them, pull them aside, say, is everything okay? And would just kind of be there and listen to them. But then sometimes, and I had to learn how to do this, the counselor needs a counselor. So, yeah. And so in your case, if you're the caretaker, it's so hard to tell somebody, can somebody take care of me? And can somebody help me? In this case, can somebody help me? And it's so wonderful that you had, like you said, your friend and your friend's husband show up, at some early morning time, didn't think anything of it. Just said, "Oh, we're coming. Here we come." Right. And like you said, you can't put a value on that. You can't. It's just amazing that you have those folks in your life, and you're so fortunate to have that. And I have a few of those people like that myself. That no matter what's going on, if I called them and I said, I'm dying right now, I need your help, they would just drop whatever they're doing and just find me. Yeah,
they're like,
just come over.
How? Yeah, right.
Yep.
Right. It's a big deal. It's a big
deal. It is, and they know that that's vice versa too. If they need something from me, if it happened right now in the middle of this live stream, my phone went off. I said, "Sorry, we got to stop this."
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Yeah, somebody that I know is really in need of my help right now. And within reason. If it's an emergency, yes. If it's something else, like, hey, can you, I don't know, some other goofy things, like, what? There's the boundary thing. So then, because like maybe tomorrow.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's where it gets tricky, I think, when you want to be available to people, and at the same time it's like, okay, but can I be there for you in the way that you need me to, if it is something that is like, can we maybe do that on a weekend?
Yeah, and it's that thing, and it's different for every person and the people that you surround yourself with. And you said it too, that during the pandemic, you really did kind of find out who you could lean on. You could find out people's beliefs. You can find out who's kind of walking the walk and who's not. And sometimes you had to kind of let people. I know in my case, I had to kind of let some people keep on walking which way they're going to go, because I didn't realize how different we were. But at the same time, I've also really found, especially doing these live streams, that it's been hard, but a really educational experience to try to connect with somebody who's on the polar opposite of what I believe. And as long as there was some level of respect there, then we would take those small baby steps to try to get to that middle ground. But it has not been easy at all. So anyone who's new to my YouTube channel or anything, if you ever are bored or whatever, and you just want to start looking through all the things, you'll find some interviews in there that were, I wouldn't call them, they were never heated, but they were a little tense at times, because I don't shy away from things. But at the same time, I don't feel that's my style either. I don't sit there and do that kind of thing. That's just not me.
But there again, like, having those conversations, and tough though they may be, I mean, that's another opportunity to grow. It takes a certain level of understanding and self-awareness and tact, and just connection, even if it's not, okay, maybe we're not on the same level, but we're on this human level, and we kind of know, okay, there's going to be a mutual respect here, but we're going to have differing opinions, and that's okay. and it's difficult, but it's like, I think you're probably going to be much better served by that than people that avoid those conversations and just get mad and they're like, forget it, I'm out of here. You know?
Yeah, very well said. And that's kind of what I decided, because I found myself becoming exactly what I said I didn't like about other people. So it's like, well, wait a minute, then I become this whole issue of what I said I don't like about the person over here. So I need to kind of check myself, step back a bit, and then kind of reevaluate. So how do I want to kind of proceed with these things? And it happens sometimes pre-show when I will talk to a guest who I don't know and I go, whoa, they said some things out of their mouth that I'm already getting a little steamed about. And I thought, well, that's not, what I want to be about. Let me kind of hear them out. Again, as long as there's respect there. If there's not respect, that's totally different to me. If it becomes like a personal attack or something on me, then it's like, okay, the gloves are off. And then I'll call Angie and she'll come kick your ass or whatever.
Like literally, the gloves are off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know people.
I know.
I shouldn't say this on a live stream, but it's always funny to me. So I have a friend that I've actually kind of lost contact with. I know he still lives around here because he's married and has children, but he loved to get physical with people. He used to work as a bouncer, and he always told me, even as a bouncer, the job was to de-escalate situations, not to escalate them. But then he was a guy that outside of there, I can't remember what he was studying martial art wise, but he also loved hockey and he loved a lot of physical kind of sports. So if you ever got a chance to like legitimately rough somebody up for something they'd done wrong to somebody else, he was all about it. He was all about it. So I'm like, did I do something wrong to you? Hopefully not, because I don't want you coming after me.
What just happened?
Yeah, he said, no, it's not. So Mark, I don't go looking for a fight, but if there's something that's clearly wrong and something needs to be done about it, I don't shy away from it. And then I should add that this guy was 6'10", and built like a hockey player. He was not like a basketball player. He was thick. And then his friend, who I met later, was taller than him. And I'm like, where do they grow people like you?
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, they're almost like, are things going well with you? Do you have any kind of problems with anything? I was like, hey, relax. Everything's good in my world. I don't want you getting
like I'm fine.
Yeah, don't put any exercise in to somebody because they stared at me wrong or whatever. It's like, good grief. Takes all kinds, I guess. But to kind of wrap this up, and I do want to thank everyone that's been joining us through tonight with Angie. And so you're local to this Northwest area, but obviously we have people in the chat who are not. Some people who are Vegas, people that are down in Texas. So if they're interested in getting involved in yoga or any type of martial art, what would you recommend they do? How do they kind of find, quote unquote, a good place to start versus perhaps one that's kind of questionable?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I would definitely, people have class trials out there all the time, and that's exactly what it's for. And you will kind of catch a vibe of what works for you. I tend to lean towards the more independent studios, maybe not so much the franchises that are out there, but the folks that are developing their own programs a little bit, that kind of thing. Not to say you won't have a good experience of franchise location for that. That's not what I'm saying, but I have found that just on my end, some of the mentors and instructors that I've leaned to, those are the areas they've come from, is where they've come up kind of more apprenticeship style than straight out of just a business model. You know what I mean? And that's where it's like, just go try things. Go try things. And if they have a 3-class trial, do all 3 classes. If they have a 2-week trial, do all 2 weeks before you decide anything, and see how that goes. In the yoga community, I mean, it's an interesting thing because I feel like there's a teacher and a style for everybody. And, like I like to dip into a hot yoga class on occasion, and that's one of those things I do just for me. I try to hide in the back row. I just want to like get out of my own head and just let someone else tell me what to do and guide me through that practice. And that's one of those, for some people that I know that have a regular yoga practice, a hot room to them sounds terrible. I love it. So it depends. So that's where I would just say go in to any of those situations, just a really open mind, give yourself some grace that you're not going to be perfect at it right away. And no one is. Exactly 0 people walk into any kind of martial arts studio or yoga facility and go, well, I got this down on day 1. You know, like, just embrace being new. You have an amazing opportunity to ask all the questions and try all the things. Like, just enjoy the process for what it is. But start.
There you go, everybody. So that's really good advice of wherever you are in the world, that this is how you can get yourself involved with things. If you're, based on what we've been talking about, if you start getting interest, or maybe you already had an interest, and this is kind of just pushing you to, as Angie said earlier in the interview, finally walking through that door for that first class, and moving from wish to reality, and doing things about anything in life that you want to try to do. It. I just heard somebody talk about how that you'll never actually be ready. People always find the reason, oh,
No.
I'm going to start that next week because I don't think I'm really ready, or I'll start this 6 months from now. I'll start. No, just start now. Start doing it now, and then start working through it.
If I was waiting till I was ready, I'd still be waiting to do my first competition. Like, it took someone else telling me, like, you should go do this. So I was like, oh, okay. Go.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm a perfect example about how, and I've told this story a million times about that Alice tour where I almost said no to them. And it's because I kept thinking, that sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like, I know how I get when I get a new project and I overthink it, and I'm going to just be up all night and trying to basically psych myself out of it. But then it became something that yielded so many wonderful additional results that I never ever could have guessed, would have happened had I not decided just to jump into that deep end and just go. And in this case, I was forced to because there was a start time. It wasn't like I could say, oh, I'm just going to wait. Let's start doing this 6 months from now or a year from now. It's like, Mark, do you want to be a part of this? Because the tour starts on May 22nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. in Los Angeles virtually. So I'm like, oh, so that's like only 2 weeks away. That doesn't sound like a lot of time.
Nothing like a deadline.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, just kind of get to it. And I've mentioned the example of the painting stuff that I started doing today. One day I said, yeah, just like F it, just start doing it and see what happens. And you can't, like you said, I like that you were saying that, embrace being new. And that thing that so many people don't do that. They think things in their head. So I want to go in there and just bang this down, show how good I am already right from the get-go. It's like, no, you have to understand that you might actually be the quote unquote worst person in the class when you first get there because of your skill set or something that you're just not used to doing. Your body movement isn't used to what you're doing, all that kind of stuff. So you have to, like you said, give yourself some grace and stay with it for a bit to really get a flavor for, is this something I want to still do or something I just need to move on to the next thing? I see bad habits are easy and good habits are hard. Yeah, that's true, Steve. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't say no either to the Alice tour. My life would be so different right now if I had said no. I actually don't know what would have happened to Eclectic Arts at that point. It would still exist, but it sure as heck wouldn't be as big as it is now. And I wouldn't be, reviewing my next film festival starting Wednesday. So we were talking about that earlier in the interview about how finding balance and taking time for yourself and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm not doing that very well right now. But I will. I'm self-aware enough to realize that I need to change that. So the old Mark would have been just bring it on. I'll just keep taking it. Yeah, and then eventually my body says, you know what, you're stupid. We're going to shut you down for a while, and put you out of commission. Yeah. Yep, I've had back problems, so a lot of times that's what my body would do. You know what? We're gonna make your back flare up again, and that'll put you out of commission and make you stop doing these things. And so I started listening to my body more, and also to my brain a little bit more about that. You know what? It's good to challenge yourself. It's always good to challenge yourself, but in some cases, I've been challenging myself too much, biting off more than I can chew. And then, and I don't want to be that person because then I'm not doing 100% across the board. I'm doing, 85% here and 75% there and maybe 99% there. And that sucks. That's just not being good, to the things that I said I would follow through on any respect of my life. So I totally recognize that, folks. I'm trying to get it back in line, and it will
We're
be.
all gonna check on you now.
Well, yeah, you definitely can. I'm just thinking about this. You can come, you go to my YouTube channel. Mark, you said you're going to work on your balance. I see you've got 5 live streams coming up right now, or whatever.
I know. We noticed your schedule.
Yeah. Oh man, the comments at work. That's going to be terrible.
Get ready.
Yeah, I come around, I know, doing this, and people are like, so Mark, I noticed. I'm like, oh, it'd be like having a bunch of parents around you, basically.
Right? Exactly. That family.
Yeah, maybe I need it. I don't know, but hopefully I don't. I think I know how to get this under control. I think I do. Maybe possibly. Well, Angie, again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about everything, and everyone in the chat, Steve and Alex and Prinz and your sister, and I know I'm sorry I'm missing some other people that were in here and maybe are just watching and not in the chat. And if you're watching this down the road, again, check out Angie and everything she's doing. Her social media handles are in the YouTube description, so you can find her through Northwest Strong Girl. And your yoga one is also down there, but I forget what it's called. It's
Vinyasa Viking.
There we go.
Yes.
Vinyasa.
Come follow me.
Yeah, you can follow her, and I wish you well with everything and hope that you have a very, very speedy recovery. And I have a feeling what's going to happen during that initial part of recuperation is that drive that you have is going to perhaps get focused into maybe something new, like we were talking about. So maybe that's not something physical, but maybe you start painting, or you start doing some other kind of crafty hobby thing to channel that energy, because that's, like, you're right, it's going to be hard to just kind of stop.
Right. I know. Talk about accountability. I'm going to have a lot of folks coming after me to be like, are you sitting down?
Well, and like your sister was saying earlier about that, you can catch up on the show she's been recommending to you. So during that time.
Right. I know. I have such a big list from her. Oh my gosh.
Well, and I can add, if you haven't ever watched Yellowstone, that starts up on November 7th, and that's my favorite TV show on the Paramount Network. So you can add that to your list as well.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. And I've interviewed 2 people from the cast, and it looks like I'm having one of them return, which I just found out. So we're going to try to talk about after the first 2 episodes. Yeah, once they air, we're going to try to come on like maybe a couple of days after that to be able to finally talk about all the stuff that's been so secretive, and just kind of blow the doors open on that. So anyone else out there that's a Yellowstone fan, just know that's coming. And don't overdo it, Angie, and see you, Mark. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Stay safe down there in Wichita Falls, Texas. And has Alice put you in the hot seat yet? Alex, they have not, but I have been interviewed by Sydney Sherwood. She came on and put me in my my own hot seat, and so I was interviewed. So that's on my YouTube channel. But Alice, we never actually got that together, and I didn't want to press them because I know, and you know how busy they are. So if it happens, I'm totally open to them asking me questions from all the Alice folks. But I'm just kind of leaving it kind of the ball's in their court. So if they choose to do so, if you want to message them and bug them or something, feel free to do that, Alex. But for right now, yeah, if you didn't see the one with Sydney, it's actually really good. She did a great job preparing for that, and I still can't believe that she's 19 years old because she comes across like she's 30. But anyway, again, Angie, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate it. This has been fantastic.
Awesome. We'll definitely have to do this again, at least the virtual part of this, and then I'll see you when I see you.
Yes.
Yes. And we'll kind of go from there. So yeah, thank you, Alex, and thank you, everyone, and again, thank you, Angie, and have a good night and a good week, and stay safe out there. And again, if you want to see more of what I do, you can check out my YouTube channel, and if you want to come back live, you can come back on Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific, and we'll hear everything that Evan Leong has to say about his film Snakehead. So until then, see you all. Good night.